So I still do have doubts about the practice.
Mm-hmm.
I experience myself becoming more solid in meditation.
More
Solid,
solid. Yes.
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 which feels nice.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Not thrown around that much.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm physically quite exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And I do still find myself not knowing what is happening
Mm-hmm.
and really wanting to trust. And I do experience the people who have been in your field from kind of the start of their process. I do experience them in a certain way, in a very lovely way. And I sometimes feel that that is missing in me in a way. That kind of guidedness internally.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, how to deal with that doubt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Shall we go there? Yeah? Or you want to continue? Is there something else?
I think I would like to add one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
I experience in meditation when I feel the presence of the field or your presence as well. It's really hard for me to take the energy in or allow the energy in.
Mm-hmm.
Like 2 days ago or so, I experienced a lot of sadness about that as well.
The issue of trust, the issue of doubt. May I suggest that we have clarity about the trust and the doubt, so we don't just heap it together. The issue of trust is one thing, and doubt, though it may seem, well, isn't it one and the same? Maybe, but not quite the same. We may have all the trust in God. In God we trust, they say. But doesn't mean we don't have doubts that we are somehow can reach that communion. So the trust here is in place, but the doubt still lingers. Now, before we come more specifically to what is really pertinent to you, in more universal terms, in more, from that more all-embracing, applicable to all, there's something universal about the nature of a doubt. That's why they say that doubt is the lust to live. That's that same Saint Thomas or Saint Thomas's finger in a wound of Christ. Remember that encounter, no? That last encounter. That is the last encounter, where the doubt is tested by the most doubtful of all the apostles, where he has to put his finger right into the wound to make sure that indeed, no, this is Christ. It's kind of been the subject of many painters. In Caravaggio in particular, there's this very almost hyper-realistic Christ just stands like that, you know, very vulnerable, and then Thomas is just like poking his finger right into the wound. There's that like ouch feel. So doubt can only be cleared when you will have that what removes all doubts. You see? When you will know that there are no doubts left. In the meantime, this happens. In the meantime, it is my job to reflect to you, whatever is in my capacity, so as these doubts do not create obstructions on the path. You see? So, doubt by its very nature will remain until there is this, in whichever way it may be experienced, as a download, as a direct sense of communion, as something that may be experienced as in most all-revealing manner, when that what is, beyond words, names, beyond any conceivable means of how it can be spoken about, directly unveiled in your own heart, then all doubts lay asunder. They have no place. There's no doubt. For the rest of your life, in this embodied form, you'll live with no doubts. Doubts will be gone. But before that, there will be doubts. You cannot solve doubt on a level of trust. In God we trust. We may have as much trust in God as there is possibly gained. But that does not, in turn, removes the possibility of us being doubtful about our capacity to reach God in speaking in this kind of language, speaking in these kind of terms. So you may want to say, well, I'm speaking more about the process, you know. I'm not speaking about God, I'm not speaking about high categories. I'm speaking about my process. I have doubts about my process. And the issue of trust and what you have related thereafter, how you feel this presence, right? And that presence and this presence, and how you feel you wish you can receive that. And you feel that there is something in you that perhaps prevents you to receive that, maybe in fuller measure. Because I don't believe that you don't receive it, and I don't believe that you don't feel that you're not receiving it, but maybe you feel that there is more to it. There's a possibility of open these floodgates. Maybe there is some feeling in you that you feel that there is somehow you are not fully given to it. Not fully given to that what is there as that presence. I will say something now which might be a little bit paradoxical sounding. potentially could be misleading. So this is to be taken with a pinch of salt, with discernment. It could be misleading. But I'm speaking to you now, so this is addressed to you. Really, there is only two ways of securing this in a sense of what it represents when we speak about the process. There's really two sure ways. In myriad of different ways, there's only really two ways in terms of what this trust represents. You either completely surrender to that what you recognize as a guide. Literally, you know that what I chose as a guide will guide me. Or you become that guide for yourself. There's no other way. Everything in between will be that. Do you see what I mean? And reflect on this, why that is, and you will see yourself. You will see for yourself why that is. Because in both ways, it's a totality. In both ways, it's wholesome. You see? It's like you either go for it or you don't. And there's no prenup. You either go for it, for this or for that. But you can't have that kind of your cake and eat it too. You see? So let us go into this a little bit. Whatever would be chosen has its own pitfalls. Obviously. It's never like that. It's never like, there's always like the facade, the outer. There's always two sides to the coin. There's always. Nothing comes just in that what we think it is. It always has a downside or the opposite side of it. So therefore there are pitfalls in any path, any methodology, anything we choose. Will be that. What is representing here the utmost and the best and that downside. When you go with the guide, there are downsides of dependency, the psychological dependency that is created there and then. And with that dependency, of course, a heap of other things come in. Is your choice right? Have you surrendered to the right guide? You see? Will I be taken advantage? Will he or she actually able to do this? How does it work? So the downside are there in that. You see? The plus side here is that you kind of delegate this whole thing. You just delegate that. So it takes tremendous burden off your shoulders. It's also a cultural thing. In some cultures it's easier done. Because there is maybe even on a level of DNA, it's simply easier. Easier that way. The self-mastery or being one's own guidance, in other words, guidance that is available within one's own self, is a path, it's the virya path. It's the path of the true warrior, of a true solitary man or woman. It's like it knows no superior. But the downside of that is that one can be led astray by these very, very aspects that are within yet not fully figured itself out here. So therefore that now Christian, that what will be able, that what you will not be able to bring forth. Remember that?
Yes.
If you don't bring forth that what there to save you, that what you will not bring forth will destroy you. So this is the path of self-guidance, you see? So they are complete, each in their own way. You may come from that legitimate, rational argument. Hang on a second, what's wrong with having best of both? And you might even hold me to, haven't you spoken about that, like, be smart, like, trust Allah, but tie your camel, all this, like, yes, of course. Yeah, of course, like, why can't we take the best of all the worlds? But here we speak about the process, the subtlety of the process. We speak about something here which is not easily rationally explainable. You see? So this is why, someone puts a picture of the master and does the thing in front and becomes a greater master than the one who was licking the feet of the master, of the real master. Why? Because it's in consciousness, in the nature of consciousness. It's the story of Ekalavya. Ekalavya was greater archer than Arjuna. This is the tragic of Mahabharata. Do you know that story? No? Do you know that story? Story of Ekalavya's thumb. Shall we have a little bedtime stories? Do we have bedtime milk today? Not? Tomorrow. Okay. Tonight is bedtime stories. Tomorrow is bedtime milk. Cozy. I'll bring this as a reminder. I'll make it. No? Yes. So the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita part, and it's leading to the part where the Kurukshetra is about to take place, the battle between the two clans that grew up together, right? The clan of Pandavas and clan of Kauravas. Before that would take place, there was this episode when a young boy, very young, maybe in his early teens, comes to the teacher of both clans whilst they were still growing up together, all brought up by the blind king Dhritarashtra. Because the sons of Pandu, they ended up without a father. They had to pay penalty and retrieve into the mountains for interfering in the lovemaking of Shiva. So the story goes. So instead, the sons of Pandu were brought in the house of Pandu's brother, blind king Dhritarashtra. So in other words, they were brought up by their uncle. And the Kauravas were their cousins, therefore. And they had a teacher who taught both of them when they were all in their blooming youth, when it was time to learn. His name was Drona. He was the great teacher of his time, the greatest teacher. Teacher of all the martial arts, and particularly the art of archery. So, of course, Krishna was around, lingering, before he will take his place as a charioteer of Arjuna. But he was around, already there, as a friend. This boy comes in and asks for the audience with Drona. And finally, whatever set of circumstances he gets that audience granted, And some say that it took this encounter was that he came from a very far away and asked to be accepted as a student. And Drona looked at him and recognized this force of determination. And some doubt entered his heart. After all, he doesn't know where the boy comes from. He doesn't look like he comes from the princely caste. He doesn't look like son of Kshatriya. So he sent him away. He said, he dismissed him. How dare you even asking to be taught here in this company? Who do you think you are? Out of my sight. So boy, whose name was Ekalavya, went, retreated somewhere in a nearby jungle and created an effigy of Drona, a sculpture of Drona made out of clay, with complete likeness. He was a very talented boy. And he began worshipping that effigy of Drona and continue practicing. So the stronger his connection grew, the more he was able to receive from the subtle plane, not what Drona was saying whilst he was teaching the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and particularly Arjuna, because he knew he was a very wise, very old warrior, that Arjuna is to play an important role. And Arjuna was also the most talented of all the Pandavas when it comes to the art of warfare. He was a mighty warrior. So when the competition took place and it was evident that Arjuna is the greatest archer of all, to the dismay of anyone who took part in the competition, because of what he scored. Then this whole celebration is disturbed by some kind of barking of the dogs, some kind of like commotion. Arjuna goes to see what's going on and receives the news that they found the body of a dog with 12 arrows in his mouth. He runs to Drona and says, Drona, this is impossible. You told me I'm the greatest archer in this time. And I just heard this story. That's what just happened. So they all gathered and hastily went to look for whom these arrows belonged. And arrows, of course, at that time were marked. So they couldn't recognize, who was shooting these arrows. Finally, somewhere they were shown to the way where they found Ekalavya, all completely composed, because he's like now achieved this level of mastery. And Drona comes and visibly disturbed, demands some kind of explanation. At this point, Ekalavya kneels in front of the Drona and tells him, Sir, I received the highest guidance from you. Now please name your dakshina, the payout. And Drona looks at the boy, recognizes the gravity of the situation, and then says, give me your right hand thumb. And in this very moment, this very spot, Ekalavya takes his knife and cleanly cuts off the thumb, knowing very well that he is no longer an archer. because you cannot shoot arrows without a thumb. And gives it like this to Drona. Some say that this really the beginning of the war, or the beginning of violence in Mahabharata. Some say that this act disturbed the equilibrium. There are these commentators, that were giving this gloss to what that act meant to represent. The reason, of course, was why Drona demanded the thumb of Ekalavya, because he recognized that he is indeed greater archer than Arjuna. And yet his intuition was telling him that it is Arjuna who will decide something very important in the destiny of the Pandavas. And even though he will fight on the other side when the Kurukshetra will break, he will fight on the side of the blind king and his sons. You see, he will actually face in the battle the Pandavas, the kids he taught the art of warfare. But this act, which many stumbled to understand why such cruelty, was basically an attempt on the part of Drona somehow to avert the potential danger, because that conflict was already brewing. And how it will break out, it is immaterial. But where will that draw that boy? Which side will be he in? You see? So he wanted to basically remove any possibilities that Ekalavya can pose any threat there. But the moral of the story here, another side of the story, of course, what it illustrates, it's the capacity of receiving the teaching. You see? So you tell me now, what kind of path he took of the two I've described? The only true answer is because, can you tell me? You don't have to tell me. You can reflect on this. Interesting, isn't it?
Still processing.
Mm-hmm. That's very wise of you and very nice of you as well. Not to jump with conclusions, because it is something to reflect on. So which path Ekalavya chose, or his example represents? But that kind of, now we'll leave it at that, the aspect of being able to surrender to guidance, which is required anyway to learn anything. it's also what opens up a lot of the energy which goes to waste, simply. So even from practical point of view, it's simply tried and tested. Those who speak about it today, belittling this, maybe there are certain reasons that were aforementioned as the downside, that is true. All that whole kind of guru scene, guru thing, right? All that what potentially could lead to potential repercussions. But when it comes to the practical aspect, when we view this from the point of view of flow of energy, you see? Flow of energy. In the surrender, the energy no longer knows obstacles, it flows freely. And that's in that what they speak in all traditions, it flows from heart to heart as well. It flows from heart to heart. For example, I will speak from my own example now. When you already have quite some forming idea of yourself as an artist, and already quite being held in high esteem by your peers, and like you already, like, you know you're the best. You just know you're the best. In professions, it's very easy to know you're the best. Not in any arrogant way, simply based on what it represents. Doesn't mean that you're a better artist. Time will tell. Better musician, better poet, better writer. Only time will tell. But when you are learning craft, you know where you are. One knows. And then others also tell you, yeah, it's like you have this double confirmation. And then you still want to receive the guidance. You still want to grow, you know that. And because of that quite strong sense of self-worth, it will not be easy to find guidance. The more you are in the possession of that self-confidence, the more difficult it is to find the guidance. Because that guidance has to be right. You see? But once you find that guidance, right? Once you come and you know this is master. So when this and that, teach, and try to, like the teacher comes and tries to tell me something. Because this teacher, that teacher, frankly, I had no respect for them. I had no respect for them. Another one, he doesn't even really paint himself. Why should I respect? Because he's a teacher, because he is decorated, because he has many, many years of experience, because he has a white beard and a right hat. So when I finally met those artists who were like really, really commanded respect in what they were doing, every word they were saying, right? Everything that they were saying, I was like a little boy, like a little dog even, ready to listen and eat every word. Every remark they will make, I will go to sleep rich, And I was the best in my class. Maybe in the college, art college. My diploma was taken to the museum right away. The painting. and local museum, obviously, not museum, not metropolitan. So, but when I'm in the presence of a teacher, master, who I know can teach me, you know, and if he says something there, even if I disagree, I listen. I listen to that, evaluate. And eventually, in most cases, I can see that yes, completely yes. And great teachers, they teach not in do like this a little bit, do like this a little bit, do like this a little bit. The only teachers who like, let me show you. They come and just like, how about, do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's like, you know. Why I'm saying this, it's not just like some kind of why we speak about that, the concept of space earlier. It's like, what defines Ma? Tower that can be, what? Named is not the tower. So, what I do share is that we all share, we belong to this culture where this doesn't exist. And we spoke about it, and I spoke about it for the last 10 years at least. It doesn't exist. And we are making our ways here, you see? We put this not because of that, but only because of this part. Ask the team. The trouble of climbing up the high ladder, the putting it all, like adjusting again, not because of the picture. To sit at the feet of green Buddha. Is green? Blue, green. But because of this part, that's all will be used. That's all you're going to see in post-production. So, deliberate dressing down myself, deliberately like being cool with you, doing the same things with you. All this. But if you don't see the teacher in me, I cannot make you see one. You will never see one. If you do not see, I cannot give you my eyes. Because I know, when I saw the artist, I knew who can teach me. I knew who can teach me. And when I knew who can teach me, I became like bendy, like water. I wanted to be directed. I didn't come there to say, oh, let's have discussion. Look, I've got these couple drawings. Tell me, sir, what do you think? Because there were a lot of like this. Okay? I was already a big boy. And in the artist environment, you know, it's like all like this, and you know, like this and like this. It's like, so no, just I don't want to make it into a big deal. You have to be able to do it. I can help you a little bit, but I cannot like do something now here, you know, like I'm going to make a diamond ring now out of nothing. Look, this is just like that. Do it's going to be diamond ring here. It's going to be diamond ring here. Would you believe me after that? It's safer here. So it takes, this is why I said it takes two to tango. See?